You've reissued Money, Greed, and God. This is the 10th anniversary of the original.
Yes.
What changed? What prompted you to reissue the book?
A lot of it was just a lot of the details. So I talk about 8 myths in the original book. It's the same 8 myths in the revised edition. But honestly, when I first wrote the book, I focused a lot on socialism, and my editor thought, you're beating a dead horse. You know, this was 2007. The book came out in 2009. Nobody's talking about socialism. So we cut a bunch of the treatments of socialism. And in the revision, my new editor said, actually, why don't we beef up the socialism discussion? Because if anything, whereas before it was sort of behind the scenes, socialism is now endorsed publicly in American political debate, and critiques of the market come from both the left and the right. So I felt like I needed to update it to account for that.
Well, when AOC and Bernie Sanders and every Democrat candidate for president talks about socialism, they don't seem to be talking about the same thing. They're different versions of it. I mean, let's do the hard case for social. What is it?
I say if we're going to talk about an idea, let's first look and see what the dictionary says it is, right?
Yeah.
If you look up in Merriam-Webster what socialism is, it's the two main things are it's a system in which the government owns the means of production. So all the productive property is owned by the government. And second, it's a system in which private property is abolished. Now, I suspect if you asked a millennial, first define the term in that way and then ask them if they like socialism, you wouldn't get a lot of takers. But instead, I think what they're picturing is something like their imagined scenario of a Scandinavian village, and a little fishing village in Norway where everybody has a Volvo in their garage and plenty of fish to eat, and they're able to sing together in the morning at the library. Things like that, right? It's a mental picture that stands in for socialism, as opposed to the actual definition of the word and the actual history of the 20th century whenever socialism has been tried. So I think half the argument is just actually getting clear what we're talking about.
Well, the AOC was on TV not too long ago, and she was saying, somebody said, well, you don't want us to be like Venezuela or Soviet Union or Cuba. And she said, no, I had in mind nice countries like Sweden. But even Sweden, as I understand it, about 80% of the schools are privately operated.
Oh,
There's
absolutely.
no government school system, and so the government ownership of most of the businesses, they don't own it.
No, that's exactly right. I mean, if you just stick with the standard definition of socialism, AOC doesn't want to talk about actual socialist countries such as Venezuela, but she wants to talk about countries that maybe have a large social safety net, but aren't socialist. In fact, all the Scandinavian countries are always very high on the annual index of economic freedom. In fact, it's easier to start a business in some Scandinavian countries than it is in the United States. And so it's only by really twisting the definitions, avoiding the actual socialist practice, and preferring your own private definition, I think that this debate even gets off the ground.
Well, don't some of the millennials just think it's mainly people being really nice to each other?
Oh, absolutely. Even AOC once, when she was asked what she meant by socialism, it was something like, well, a system in which everyone is accorded a basic level of dignity. Well, everybody wants that.
Sure.
Of course, I suspect every well-meaning American wants us to have a system in which everyone's rights are respected. That's not the question. The question is, what's the best economic arrangement this side of the kingdom of God for a culture to actually be able to emerge from poverty? That's, I think, the key moral question when it comes to economics.